Welcome to Get Moving TV. I'm Dr. Chris Lind and I serve as your host. Here in Ventura County, we have a number of hidden gems, which we're going to hear more about, but we also have the underpinnings, the things that have lasted 100 years, that have involved the very earliest settlers here in Ventura County. Today, I have Wesley Fish with me, and as you can see, he has a uniform on. Wesley, tell me about your uniform and who you're representing.
Well, I'm currently the Scoutmaster of Troop 102 here in Ventura, sponsored by the United Methodist Church. And we happen to be the oldest Boy Scout troop in Ventura County Council. We started in 1921.
So this is your 100th anniversary.
So the 100th anniversary is coming up very soon, yes. And the council as well will be 100 years old in 2021. They started in June and we started in December of the same year.
So tell me a little bit about Ventura County and how scouting started here.
Well, reality is that scouting started in Ventura County through the Congregational Church in 1910. There was a unit sponsored for 4 years through that church. We have very little record other than newspaper clippings and the congregational notes saying that they had disbanded the Boy Scouts in 1914. But that was when it started. But in the meantime, there were troops throughout the county that came and went. And when you go through the old newspaper records and stuff, you find clippings about troop such and such in Port Hueneme, or troop such and such in Santa Paula or Fillmore. And there was more scouting in Fillmore and Santa Paula in the early days because of the nature of the county. The oil industry was focused up there, and there was also an active railroad industry that worked out of there.
What a fascinating time. So for me, the Boy Scouts helped me with a camp up in Ojai and built, an Eagle Scout built a structure for us as part of his badge. Did they always start out by building things? What kind of things have been built, and when were they built here in Ventura County?
Well, as far as things that would be built that are more or less permanent or semi-permanent, nothing's permanent forever. There's not a lot that has been built other than at the actual camps that is made out of normal building construction and stuff like that. There is a historical building at Wheeler Gorge off 33, across the street from the ranger station, and as right in the entrance to where the actual camp is, it's run by the Forest Service. And that rock house was built as part of the original camp for Ventura County Council, Camp Gray. And that was actually opened in 1923. So they lost the camp to the construction of 33 over the mountain, and they had to put in the tunnels, and they took the camp away from us, and we ended up with property or access up in Lockwood Valley, where we still have the Camp Three Falls, which is in Lockwood Valley, not too far out of Lake of the Woods.
And what kind of facilities are, so if I go, gosh, I sure would like my son involved in the Boy Scouts, what kind of facilities, what kind of things happen in Boy Scout camp?
Well, if we're talking about camp, summer camp particularly, they have a shooting range, or archery range. During some parts of the summer, they actually do black powder rifle. And they also have the highest climbing tower of any scout camp in California. It's 75, 78 feet tall, I guess it is. No, 73 feet tall, that's right, because it's the number of the council.
Oh.
And there's 3 different levels that they can climb up and down on and everything, and they have swimming. The pool, the reservoir lake has disappeared because of the drought. Something they're working on to try to figure out a way to resurge it, But and of course they do standard things like crafts, and they learn the traditional scout knots and lashings, and they'll, what you might be talking about, building something, traditionally building bridges made out of rope and towers. And in the early days, they actually built tall towers, but because of legal issues today, that kind of thing doesn't get done much because it's considered to be dangerous.
Well, of course, we have the anniversary of the lunar landing, and from what I remember, I think there's some Eagle Scouts involved, astronauts. What are some of when you become an Eagle Scout, how do you get there? And it seems like if it's on your resume, it's as good as a college degree to tell somebody that you're.
Well, first of all, if an Eagle Scout has had to meet a number of challenges coming up from the beginning when they become a scout. And you go from scout to tenderfoot to second class to first class to star to life and finally to eagle. And each of those has various requirements which continue to get more challenging for the boys. Now, to become an Eagle Scout today, besides having to have a number of required merit badges, such as citizenship in the nation, citizenship in the community, citizenship in the world, communications, and personal management, which means learning how to actually take care of your money and all these kind of things. You have to do a project, and the project is leadership. They have to lead a group of young people primarily, although adults can be involved as long as they're not primarily the group. And they have to plan the project first and have it approved, and then make it actually happen. And they have to get out and meet with somebody that wants this project done. For example, we had one Eagle Scout in our troop that built 2 huge cat trees up in Ojai for the Humane Society. They were 3 stories high, and he designed these things on his own computer, and those cat trees lasted about 5 or 6 years before they got too torn up and everything, and unfortunately they're gone now. But that took a lot of planning and and we've also had projects done up at the bird raptor center up there, building enclosures. There are lots of different types of, and it doesn't have to be necessarily building. No. I mean, they do blood drives, but it can't just be, just getting a little blood. They have to actually coordinate the whole thing, and so it takes a lot of planning.
So a life skill
a life skill, yeah.
If you're an employer having an Eagle Scout, doesn't just tell you he's been building models or whatever. He's really planned a project, worked with others, found the funds, found a need in the community, met it.
Right, but there's also a leadership requirement. The higher they go, the more leadership is required. When they first start out, they're just part of the troop, but they eventually hopefully become a patrol leader and then maybe a senior patrol leader, which is the #1 boy in the troop that leads the other boys. The only thing higher than that for the youth is junior assistant scoutmaster, and they have to be at least 16. But each of those requires certain things, and there are other jobs that they can do, like scribe and historian and even librarian. And some troops have buglers.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're kind of coming to the end of our time a little bit, but I don't want to miss out on this 100-year celebration. Tell me a little bit about the planning, the council, and what 100 years means. And
we're in the early stages of doing this. I just met with the Scout executive out in Camarillo just this past week, and we're talking about a little bit about it. But what we hope to do is get people that have been involved in Scouting throughout the council, the county of Ventura, to maybe contact us. And I got this great story about Scouting, or I was in troop such and such, and I remember my scoutmaster that did such and such, or whatever. I mean, there can be some great stories. In my case of my troop, when we've had fairly consistent gatherings on our anniversaries. And back in the 90th anniversary, I had a gentleman that was in the troop in the 40s during the Second World War, and he was a professional writer. He unfortunately has passed away in the meantime, but he sent me a very detailed, wonderfully well-written story about what Troop 102, which did during the Second World War, and how we served the country and how we helped the community, and what the kids did in general when all the rationing and collecting newspapers and collecting scrap metal and selling war bonds and all this kind of stuff. And, I've got a number, fortunately, I've been able to get a number of those kinds of things from past members of our troop. The oldest member of our troop that's still alive lives back in the Midwest. He became an Eagle Scout in 1945. His name is Don Randall, and he's still alive back in the Midwest. He's in his 90s. His father was one of the assistant scoutmasters in the troop back in those days.
Well, Wesley, thank you so much for joining us. This will be showing on TV. It'll be on our YouTube channel. So Ventura, you've got scouting stories. You'll have information right underneath Wesley showing you how to contact him. You're going to see pictures of what the scouting camps look like and where it's going in the future. So Ventura, it's time for you to get moving. Let's get scouting. Ventura, welcome back. I'm here with the action man himself, Yayo. I met Yayo at age 11. He was on a ventilator at the time in a coma. We're going to talk a little bit about why you don't want to be talking on your cell phone while you're driving. They didn't have cell phones back then, but it didn't take a little bit of distracted driving to do things. So Yayo, you and I met. You were going to Oxnard College. You were making. You're going to be an actor. You made some videos there. So why don't we talk just a little bit about what you remember from when you were age 11?
Well, I was riding my bicycle in the city of Oxnard, going for a present, a birthday present of my best friend's son's birthday. Well, there's a fireplace where 5 ways of traffic, and I think because the signal said walk, so I tried to make it to the other side of the road, and the woman, it was an old woman that hit me over. She was 60 years old, and it was already November 9, 1992. That's when the sun goes down early. I was speeding to make it to the other side, and the woman was coming towards. I guess she couldn't see me. I had no bicycle legs. I wasn't wearing a helmet either, because you know me, youngsters, we think we own the world. We think we're tough. So, but like the old woman couldn't see me, and she ran the red light. It was already like there's a green light, orange light, and then there's a red light. So she ran the red light, because I still have nothing work or the numbers going down.
Well, you were in a coma, and your brain, we had catheters in your brain to measure the pressure and so forth. You've had a long, long recovery. You've learned to talk, you've learned to walk. What did you learn at Oxnard College?
I learned, well, I did go to Oxford College to learn how to control a camera and that. Wow. And I also took acting classes. I took whole courses. I passed that. I got into filming and TV productions, and that's where I learned how to control a camera, a 60,000 or $80,000 big cameras, and I I like acting. Andres Orozco was the producer at that time. He rather have my own show on TV, and I was a star.
So community education, like we have here at Ventura Adult, that gives the opportunity, gave you the opportunity to be a producer, star of your own picture, production, learning about cameras, learning about sound, learning about how to put a production together, and to communicate. And you know, sometimes it's hard for people who you have to watch as it moves through your brain and give you the time to talk, because there's a very valuable Yayo person there.
I am a star.
What time is it, Yayo?
Yes, time for you to buy a watch.
So, what do you see as your near future? Because we have to.
Oh, well, I over my learning in college, I bought a $10,000 Panasonic camera, and since I don't have a crew no more or helpers, I still film, but I film weddings, events, birthdays. Wow, like on August 3rd, I am filming a wedding.
All right. So Ventura, you've got Yayo here. Those of you who are interested in learning how to crew and so forth, it's time to get a hold of Yayo. It's time for Ventura. Get moving. Ventura, welcome back. I'm here with Steve, one of the administrators here at VACE. He and I were talking in the hall the other day, and we were talking really about how important the census is, and what's the role of somewhere like VACE and throughout the state, the role of the census for you guys?
Well, obviously the census has a vast impact because, for one thing, it only occurs every 10 years. And if you think about it, that's 2.5 presidential terms. So Trump will be long gone by the time of the next census. So it does determine not only matters of financial import, to the state and the country. For example, California receives approximately $76 billion of federal funding. That comes to a potential count of $2,000 a head. So in the case of the census, which is counting the population, if that count is not accurate, for every uncounted person, that comes to approximately $2,000 that the state's not receiving. And in the case of the census this time round, the Government Analyst Office has done some research and predicts that the count could be as low as 60%. That's a lot of people not counted. The reason for this is that, well, partially the negative public opinion, public perception of the census at the moment, which is largely caused by the current political climate. In addition, the census this time round is going to be online. So there's a whole technological aspect to it that's going to be a challenge to a large number of people. And furthermore, the investment in the census this time around, there have been a lot less contracts awarded for the census. There has only been one pilot census instead of 3 pilot census, and that one was actually in Rhode Island, which is not very similar to California. So all these reasons basically have contributed to a likelihood that there will be an undercount, and that undercount will greatly affect California. So for that reason, Adult Ed sees that we have a role, and we as one entity receiving federal funding as well as state funding are concerned about it. On another level, of course, the census determines, quite apart from financial matters, it determines electoral boundaries, the electoral college, and down to the granular level, you know, how many fire stations are located in your neighborhood? Well, that's a determination of the population that's measured by the census. So the census actually affects everyone to greater or lesser extent.
So obviously you have a feeling, as I think most of us do, that California is being punished one more time, and this is a good way to keep funds from coming to California, making people terrified of the census or what it's looking at and so forth. So how can we go about, is there a program where people can become census takers, can get paid for training, that adult education centers can really help out their communities?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that. Because actually there is. The Adult Ed on the state level is promoting, firstly, census awareness. We want to make sure people understand that A, the census is coming, and B, it's very important to respond and complete the census. So Adult Ed is developing programs, courses to teach our English as a second language and adult secondary education population about the census and the fact that they should complete it. But also, pragmatically, right now, we're in the process of getting people hired to prepare for the census. And so part of this initiative is a pilot program of which VACE is part of, which aims to increase awareness that there are census jobs out there and that they are actually very attractive jobs. In Ventura County, the pay starts at $20 an hour. The entry requirements, or the eligibility requirements, are fairly easy to meet. You don't even need to have a high school diploma. Of course, that's helpful. You are required to have a fair degree of digital skills, and you are required currently to be a citizen. Although that is likely to change. Last time there was a census, they lowered the requirement from citizenship to green card holders because they couldn't hire enough people to fill the jobs. And this time around, there's a likelihood it's going to be even harder because employment's relatively low. There are 55,000 jobs in the census field coming up in California. The first ones right now, that's census listers. Those are the people who go around verifying addresses exist and so on and so forth. And then the next wave of employment will actually be the census enumerators, who will be the ones who are going around assisting people doing the census. And our focus is to try and explain to people that these are jobs they can do. These are jobs that are well paid, $20 an hour. These are jobs that have paid training, and these are jobs that will, at the end of the day, go through a federal background check, so you'll have something on your resume that says you are eligible for federal employment, and not inconsequentially, after you've done the job as a census or enumerator, you are actually eligible for unemployment. So for a lot of adult ed population, these are kind of attractive things that we could be looking for. So the pilot that we're involved with in partnership with a nonprofit is they have developed a online tool. And basically what it is we have a phone number, and if they text the phone number, jobs, J-O-B-S, or empleo, if you want to do it in Spanish. Incidentally, I should mention that there's a great need for bilingual census enumerators, because those are the populations that are most likely to get undercounted, and those are the populations who are going to be most negatively impacted. So if you're bilingual, that's a big plus. Anyhow, if people text this number, they will get asked 3 questions. The questions basically say, are you 18 and a citizen? That question is very carefully phrased, so the answer doesn't indicate that you're either not 18 or a citizen, right? Where do you live? I.e., that's determined by, they ask, what is your zip code, right? And I can't remember what the third question is, but it's a fairly innocuous question. Anyway, after they've answered this question, it basically says, would you like to receive more information about the census? And then it will send a link to a video. The video will explain what the census is, what the jobs are, and the process of applying for the jobs. And then this online tool helps them create the profile that they need to apply for census jobs, and takes them through the process of the job application through to the interview stage.
Thank you, Steve, so much. This information will be presented along with this portion of the interview. Ventura, it's time for you to really fill out your census forms, support the Scouts in the 100th anniversary, and get Yayo to your wedding. So, Ventura, get moving.